And the problem I'm addressing is that over half of the first graders that are in my class this year are well below grade level with reading and phonemic awareness and phonics and all of the above. So our school went through letters training this past summer, and we learned about sound walls and how students move from speech to print. And I wanted to implement the use of a sound wall in my classroom to help improve students' reading scores. The assessment measures that I'm using to determine this are, if the sound wall is helpful, is the Dibbles Acadience assessment, the past phonemic awareness assessment, the core phonics survey, and we're also using the letter spelling inventory. So those 4 assessments. So far, it has been a shift in my teaching. I know that sounds funny, but it has really taken a lot of time for me to step back and be like, okay, am I really teaching speech to print? Or am I just doing the things that I've always been doing because I know how to do them? And it's taken some time for me to figure out how to implement that. And I didn't think it would be that difficult. I thought it would come more naturally. And that's been kind of hard to figure out, because as I've been researching sound walls specifically, there's not a ton of information specifically regarding sound walls in particular. There's a ton of information on phonemic awareness, speech to print, things like that. But with an immediate focus on sound walls, there hasn't been a ton. But the one thing that I've really been trying to do is incorporate it into my everyday teaching and not just let it become wallpaper. Because the articles that I have found on sound walls talk about how important it is to really use it daily with students so that they're saying it, you're saying it, they're seeing it. And it really is for students and not just for teachers to look good, I guess you could say. But it's taken me some time to find a way to incorporate that into my daily teaching. And the one thing that I found really interesting is, like I said last time, is they want you to cover up what you haven't taught yet. So right now in my class, we've made it through our short vowels and our consonants, and that's where we're at. So sometimes it's like when we review, it's like we're just practicing our consonants and we're practicing how they sound and how our mouths look and what it looks like when we say words or tap words that include those sounds. So we're using a lot of mirrors. We're practicing those sounds specifically with the sound wall and the phonemic awareness. And it's like a new way of teaching, and it's been kind of hard for me. So, but I think they're making progress, and I'll be interested to see at middle of year what their scores are showing. So
I think, Lauren, that you're going to come in on G down there. Concludes with a statement on the implications of positive social change and application to the problem. You are changing yourself. And another teacher did this. She said, I asked the dumbest questions. Remember we talked about Bloom, and she asked like how many bears in the story, the 3 bears. That wasn't her project. But when she finished, she had changed herself. She became an expert questioner. And so the social change was within the teacher herself, and that's what's happening with you. And it's going to make a big influence on all those students. So I think you're on the right track. I really do. You don't know what you're doing, but you're going ahead anyway. And you're changing yourself. I mean, you're already a good teacher, but now you're improving yourself. That's positive. Chris, any comment you want to make?
So much of what she was talking about was familiar to me as I learned about letters. I'm learning about letters and sound walls And I have seen what you're expressing, that you feel like there's been a real change in how you're teaching and the difficulty of doing that. I've seen that in my school because we're going through some similar things. So it'll be interesting to find out what your end result is um, to kind of maybe even share with my staff. I recently read an article about the art of storytelling and telling a story to make your point. Kind of like you remember when we talked about make it sticky? And I'm interested in your results so that I can tell your story to my staff. So,
Well, I'm interested to see how it works too, because the two teammates that I work with have both said, I just don't think I have time to do that this year. Like, and I know all of us are running around like chickens with our heads cut off because this year is crazy. But I'm kind of curious to see the difference between my class and their classes, because they are both master teachers. They do an amazing job, but I'm curious to see the difference between the two. So
Great. Anybody else have a comment for her? I think she's on the right track. Any other comments?
Lauren, what's a sample conversation when you're introducing a new sound from your sound wall, or you're referencing the sound wall?
So at our school, the like scope and sequence that we follow, we introduce one like vowel sound or like blend a week. So like last week it was short U, so we were working on short U all week. And when we first introduce it, we talk about, like, before I even show them on the sound wall, like we pull out our mirrors and we talk about what our throat does. Can we feel it? Is our voice on or off? What does our mouth look like? How can we hear it? Things like that. And I kind of feel like a speech language pathologist, which I have no training in. I'm like, okay, now what do you think about this? And then as we I'll uncover it on the sound wall, and they have their own personal like version of a sound wall in their phonics folder. So they'll color in that sound, and then we talk about like what the short U grapheme looks like. And when we see it in words, we know that it's spelled this way, and it's just a U, and it's a vowel, and all those kinds of things. And then as we progress throughout the week, we review and repractice other like short vowel sounds that we've been working on, but still emphasizing on the short U sound. So I've kind of, it's not great, but I've come up with it's kind of like a rap, and we it's not complete because we don't have all of our sounds yet, but we go through and we talk about the nasals for consonants, and we repractice them every day. So they're getting it over and over and over
and over and over and over
and over and over and over.
Yep.
And I have a student this year who she really does function on kind of like a preschool level. Like my success, I didn't get to share my success, I got skipped, but my success this week is we counted to 5, with counters. I was like, yes, we made it to 5, hallelujah. But so with her, that constant repractice, and it's I've seen how, I don't have the data, but I've seen how it's starting to slowly click.
That's going to be very interesting. We want to hear about it on December 15th. We want to hear all about it again now. So, Rowdy, would you like to be next, please?
Sure.
Rowdy?
Yep. All right. So my problem is we really haven't had a consistent quality reading intervention program at our school since I started. So our district adopted Spire this year, which has been an adventure. Yeah, it's been an adventure. So we chose this because it is research based, and it is systematic and repetitive. And we know that students learn through systematic repetition. So I am seeing how the Spire intervention program impacts student scores on DIBELS. So it could be positively, it could be negatively. I hope it's not negative. I will cry. But anyway, we'll see how it does. So right now, we are working on getting enough paras to help me. So my groups are at a lovely time. But anyway, right now, so really the big thing is going to be comparing my beginning of year to my middle of year, but along the way, I have to give assessments to determine if they're ready to go to the next level or not. And so I'm going to use those as well to kind of track growth in the students, particularly my struggling ones, to see, you know, if it's certain vowels or vowel teams or blends or digraphs that they're struggling with over and over. I think that will be interesting. So I also use Hegarty, so our district is currently doing letters right now. So I actually had a letters training on Friday with the district, and I had a lady, a teacher not at my school, but a second grade teacher at another school in the district, who my part of the letters training was to teach about Hegarty. And she told me afterwards, she said, I just don't have time for Hegarty and Spire. It's got to be one or the other. And I wasn't in the best mood ever. And so I looked at her and I said, well, I guess you're just planning for your kids to fail. And she kind of like looked at me and I was like, wow, that was kind of really rude.
Woo!
But anyway, I kind of like backpedaled and I was like, okay, hold up. Like, why, you know, we have to have the phonemic awareness and the phonics and everything. And so really that's what I'm finding. So I'm actually teaching Sound Sensible right now for anyone who is familiar with Spire. So I'm taking the lowest kids, and my lowest ones are in Sound Sensible, which is, in my opinion, a lot like Hegarty, but slowed down and broken down a little bit more specifically. And so while I thought that my project might like kind of hone in, I guess it's really, I guess I'm really looking now at like phonemic awareness, like how systematic phonemic awareness instruction is going to help these students. Because we do Hegarty as a whole class, and then my kids who we have identified as struggling, they get Hegarty one-on-one with a para the day before. So like they'll cover the lesson we're going to do on Wednesday on Tuesday, so that we're kind of setting them up for success, as well, where Sound Sensible is very much a phonemic awareness and pairing it with phonics, because that's where they're starting to manipulate the sounds and stuff. So I guess right now my question has kind of like faded a little bit, but I feel like I've focused in on a more specific thing, if that makes any sense at all.
Makes a lot of sense. I was really worried how big you were, because you started out with, I'm going to prove how good Spire is. I'm going to show how Spire helps. Well, that showed a bias right there. You have really narrowed it down, doing wonderfully, wonderfully. Thank heavens I didn't have to say anything. You did it yourself. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. You may need to take flowers to somebody, but I'm not going to buy your flowers for you. What do you think, Chris?
And I'm really impressed too with the learning curve that you've made, Rowdy, and bringing it down to the smaller and smaller, pinpointing it at what you actually need. I'm also excited for your kids to just rock it and be able to to show some real progress. You're using just Spire data to gather your or are you going to be using Dibbles and that? I can't remember.
So I'm going to use Spire and Dibbles both, and then the past.
Yes.
So yes, that as well.
Okay.
Okay, Jennifer, you changed ideas. Roddy's changed. You've changed. Tell us about your changes, Jennifer, please.
I have. Well, my district was looking for people to, I guess, participate in a program using complex text with upper elementary students. We are struggling with our EL population, and as I think, it's really common, right? But so we are trying out. It's from the UURC, so it is. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Brown. She has this program, Higher Steps. That's a tier 2. Focused on complex text. So I had to kind of doing it with a 3rd grade group, a 4th grade group, and a 5th grade group. And we did, to pre-test, we did a reading level assessment and a pre-test, like a phonics skills pre-test that they created at the UURC to see the deficits. And so your group has to be within, for each one of my groups, they had to be within a year reading level, kind of. And then you take the lowest one and you're reading complex text grade level above that. And most of the resources, I don't know if that's the right word, but most of the passages that I'm getting are from Common Lit or ReadWorks. And so what I'm focused on is increasing their reading level, but probably more importantly, working on comprehension and vocabulary, especially for my students or second language learners. And one of the things with this program is you're previewing, you're just reading a section of the text. It's very specific, it's very structured, the procedure that I have to go through with them. And you're front loading 5 vocabulary words that you choose ahead of time. You're working on giving them background knowledge of what they're going to read, kind of so that they'll understand. As you go through it, the first time you just ask basic comprehension questions like, what does the author want us to know? What have you learned? And you're only reading 3 or 4 sentences. They're listening to you read. You take you skip a word and they have to fill in the word, which I actually like that. I've never done it before. And I love it. And they love it when they're like right with me and they get the word. And then I can catch the ones that aren't paying attention. And then we go through it a second time and they read it with one voice. And this is when I ask extended questions. And this is the part where for the upper elementary, they have to be able to find the answer in just that little bit of section that we read. So it's going back into the text and like they can find it. So I really think that's going to help them. We use, as a district, we use iReady, for so I'm hoping to see RISE is the end of the year test. I mean, I hope, but iReady is going to be my best indicator because they have benchmarks and progress monitoring. So let me see, what else have I forgotten? Oh, and we do timed readings. So I've only done, and there's also, so there's a reading section and then there's a word study part. And you start out kind of basic with closed syllables, and vowel, consonant, E. And then there's a timed reading part. We haven't gotten to how that will be implemented, but we meet every few weeks. And let me think, did I forget anything I should have added? I think I got everything.
It sounds like you're following a really good structured program that's well researched. I think
Yeah.
social change is going to be your big thing. When you say
Yeah.
they love it, I love it. Attitude
Yeah.
is half of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
This is Maria. I'm also working with Dr. Brown at the
Oh,
URC.
yeah.
She is training Weber School District reading teachers
Mm-hmm.
to do the same Tier 2 program, and she has us videotaping ourselves using the Tier 2 approach. So I'm really happy to hear that someone else is doing it too. I've modified my own project to kind of go along with that as well.
Yep. So I have to videotape myself next week of just one section, and yeah, she's doing it at our district, and they opened it up to the elementary and the middle school. There isn't anyone from the junior high that is doing it, and yeah, you didn't have to do it, but it sounded great, and so I'm happy to be learning it.
Chris, any comments?
I love that you're working with a credible system, like Louise said, a credible, systematic system. And Dr. Brown is going to be able to help you make lots and lots of changes. So at the very first of it, you said the district had decided to make some changes and have you change your, so that led to your changing. Is that school-wide or is that just whoever volunteered?
They offered it to whoever volunteered, but it is, you know, 3 of the schools are, you know, not meeting the goals. We didn't get as many, you know, so it wasn't mandatory. It was by choice, but
And are those skills that not hitting the target, are they Title I schools, all of them?
no. Well, 2 of them are. 2 are, yeah, but they're not all. So yeah, we
That'll be
certainly,
interesting to see if you've got a comparison among schools eventually,
right,
how the progress went.
yeah.
Thank you.
So is it similar to next steps? Because that's what I'm certified in at the University of Utah Reading Clinic. Can you just use that? Because I know when I was getting certified in that, we tested them very often. So can you just use that instead of the iReady, I mean, along with your iReady assessments?
I'm
Because I know
thinking,
I just had a ton of data from it, and it showed a lot of growth just from those like weekly and monthly tests.
I know. So I did as well, like the early steps and next steps, and they're kind of teaching us piece by piece. So I'm assuming there's more to come, and if it is great stuff, I'll certainly include it. But that hasn't been shared with us yet. So
Yeah, you don't want to extend beyond what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to get swallowed up into a big thing. Yeah.
yeah. So
Stay
stay tuned.
Thank you. Maria, would you like to be next, please?
Yes, is it possible to share my screen?
If you know how, I don't.
It gives me an option, so I'm gonna try it, and
Okay.
let me know if it works. Oh wait, maybe not. Well,
Chris, if Chris was here, we could.
never mind, it's okay. I just so I had this Google slide presentation of all the children's books that I've been reading to my children, and it's just a slide with the cover of the children's book and a little bit about it. Just a slide that I share with my students. So the problem that I had, which created this research project, is that my ELL students who are from 7th through 9th grade have low reading scores on their WIDA exams. ELL students normally struggle with using background knowledge and context clues to make inferences, which makes them struggle specifically with the reading section of the WIDA test. So my project focuses on using children's books to teach inferential reading skills to my ELL students. There have been some changes. Originally, I was going to focus on starting with wordless picture books and then jumping into picture books with words and then focusing on both the pictures and the words together. But that plan changed when I started working with Dr. Brown at the UURC because I wanted to use her way of teaching Tier 2 text with children's books. So I've focused specifically on children's books with words, focusing specifically on children's books that deal with people, learning about specific people. And I have the students use that Tier 2 approach to read along with me, do basic queries and then more deep queries, and then I ask them inferential questions after we read it together. So some books that I've read with my students are The Oldest Student, which tells how Mary Walker learned to read. 14 Cows for America, which tells this true story of Stanford University student Kimeli Nayoma. I chose Maya Lin, Artist Architect of Light and Lines, which is about Maya Lin, who created the design for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And today I actually read Playing at the Border, a story of Yo-Yo Ma to my students, beginning with actually a concert by Yo-Yo Ma. So I had them listen to the cellist play before we actually read the children's book together. So some things have changed, but mostly everything is the same. I'm still reading a children's book a week to my students. I plan on asking inferential questions every week. I have the students listen to me. Then we echo read together. We do basic questions together. I have them make verbal inferences, and then they answer inferential questions on a piece of paper after we've read together. And the WIDA exam is in February, so I'm going to continue this until February, and then I get my results in May. So hopefully we'll see some rise in scores since last year.
What social change are you hoping to see?
I'm really hoping that the stigma of children's books changes in my classroom, and that the fact that we're reading together as a class makes the environment in my classroom more like a family as well.
Yeah, that's the one I like. I really like the one where you're reading, they're reading. It's just something they're assigned to do. You're participating, you're part of it. I think that's strong, really strong. Chris, any comments?
So I really wonder too, it'll be interesting if you, I know you're looking at inferential, but I'd be curious to see what happens to your students' listening skills as well when you get to that those WIDA scores. Listening seems to be one that's kind of difficult to find some strategies to strengthen, but that would be for another research, I guess. But I think that would, I think that you could even justify saying that listening skills increase makes for better inferential skills. I mean, like they both would rise because of what you're doing. So I like it.
Anybody else have a comment for Maria? Okay, we have Brindy, Jody, and then Kate and Ginger. Should we take a break or should we keep going? Yeah, speak up if you really need a break. I guess, okay. So Brindy, would you go next then, please?
You bet. Okay, so my research is on targeted reading instruction daily. The problem is these students hate reading. They are not reading at all, which is affecting all of their scores. It's affecting how they comprehend stuff, how they answer questions, all around, and in every single, what am I thinking of? Class. So every single core curriculum. And so what I've started doing is we have targeted reading classes every single day for 35 minutes. And I have a 7th grade group that we read a book. We just finished our first book this term. And every week I do a reading response for the books and the chapters that we've read. And then we do reading strategies, different reading strategies every day. So sometimes we'll read together, sometimes they'll read in a group, sometimes we'll have like the principal come in and read, and then we'll talk about it and have questions after we read that they'll have to answer. about the read, about what they've understood about the reading.